Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Freenon. I'm the Director of Communications for the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors, and thank you again for joining us for another Breakfast with Benefits. Today's topic is really important. It is how changes in the insurance industry could affect real estate and homeowners and realtors. And with us today, we have Joanne Murray and Neil Bush from the Allen Block Agency. They are right in Tarrytown. And Joanne and Neil, welcome, and thank you again for presenting for us.
Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning. Just a little bit about Allen Block Insurance before I begin, in case you're not familiar with us. We're in Tarrytown, and we do home and auto and business. And, we've worked with a lot of you over the years to help you with making a sale. That's our goal, is to help you. Doesn't always lead to any business for us, but that's, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking to help you. And if that happens, that's just a nice brownie points that happens with it. So don't hesitate to call us if you have any questions, especially as we go through this. You're going to find that things are really changing right now. So I'm going to put up some screens to share with you.
Joanne, your camera went off for some reason. We're not seeing you.
No. Does that work okay now?
There we go. Okay.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to share is not showing up. So let me see how I get that over.
We're seeing this. You have
Yeah, it's up.
Yeah.
You see it up there? Okay.
Yes. We just didn't see your face cut out.
Okay. Well, as long as you're seeing it, and for some reason it's decided to move on my screen to a different screen. So let me just kind of focus on where it is. Okay. So I guess let me just see if I'm multitasking here. Okay, so I told you about Neil and I. We've been here over 35 years, and we've seen it all happen. So what's going on right now, what I want to talk about is unprecedented. It is the hardest market that in a generation. And so we're going to talk about some important things. Please submit any questions in the chat box, and then we'll go through them. So your clients found the perfect home, and then what? They sign the contract and they go to get insurance, and they find out that nobody wants to insure the home. So let's go through why that can happen, how you can head that off, and look for some things before, when you list the house, or at least forewarn your customers. The insurance rates are skyrocketing. A lot of you may know that when you get your renewals for your home and auto, and you're, along with all the other things we're complaining about, Con Ed and our Optimum and all the other things that are going up, insurance did not escape this trend of higher rates. Many insurance companies have become risk adverse as a result of it. And because of this, there are concerns about flood zones and prior claims and certain building features. So, why are the insurance rates going up? The weather patterns, you've all seen what's happening, that when it rains now, it's not showers. It's usually at least one huge downpour during the storm, and that's really causing a lot more claims than used to be. They're much more frequent, and they're doing a lot more damage. The increased cost of materials, and you would think by now the pandemic's over, the materials and everything should have come back down, but for whatever reason, the cost of materials hasn't come back down, and there are still things. I still have people telling me stories that they've been waiting a month to get a tub for the bathroom that they're renovating. So those increased costs and longer time frames they impact settling a claim, because if you can't live in your home while the renovations or the repairs are going on, the insurance company is paying for you to live somewhere else. So now let's look at what the rents are and look at what they have to pay in rent for you to rent somewhere else while they're doing those repairs. These are all things that are impacting the rates. The change in reinsurance market. This is something I've never talked to customers about before, and I'm educating them because it's severely impacting the rates. Insurance companies have a cap. Let's say it's $100 million. If $100 million in claims happen, they can't afford to pay more than that. So they buy what's called reinsurance that will kick in when they get to that $100 million. The cost of that reinsurance has gone up dramatically, which is causing insurance companies to say, in order to make sure we don't go over $100 million, we're not going to write people in certain zip codes. We're not going to write people who have prior claims. We're not going to do people whose roofs are less than 20 years old. There's all these things going on as a result of the cost of that reinsurance. Reinsurance market is like buying stock in Pepsi. Investors buy stock and they're promised far greater returns than would be if they bought stock in the stock market. But when the reinsurers have to start paying claims, then that impacts being able to pay those returns. So in order to keep that going, they have to raise the cost of their reinsurance. So these are all reasons why the rates are going up. So I hope that you find that helpful in understanding it, because many of us just look at it and say, oh, the insurance companies are greedy. And I'm not going to say they're not. Yeah, at the end of the day, do they not want to make the same profits they've been making all along? They don't want to make adjustments, but that's how business works. So we have to deal with it. We have to figure out how to work with this. This is just a slide on reinsurance and how much that market has grown. Right now it's at like $1.3 billion. So eligibility, I talked about we're in the hardest market that we've ever been in before, and that is causing the insurance companies to look at claims. Now, when the seller is selling a house and the buyer comes in, it used to be that they only looked at the claims that the buyer might have, and they carried with them. But now they're looking at what the seller has. They used to be, they would forgive it and figure that if the new person coming in would upkeep the house differently, and they wouldn't punish them for what the seller's claims were. So now we're finding that we can't place a policy for someone because the seller put in too many claims. So then we go back to the realtor and we say, find out what these claims were. Was it lost jewelry? Was it, something that's not related to the maintenance of a home that goes with the person, so that we can go back and argue on their behalf with the underwriter and say, okay, but these claims had nothing to do with the home. So sometimes we'll, try to engage you in helping with that. Sometimes the sellers are like, I'm not sharing that. It's my personal information. But I think as more and more people have difficulty in getting the insurance, sellers will understand that they're going to have to start sharing that. Flood claims, a lot of you call me and say, can you check this address, see if there's been any claims? And I check the address and I say, there was this hurricane, the date of this hurricane, there was wind damage, or there was water damage, or maybe I say there was nothing. But the one thing that you need to know that I can't tell you is if a claim was filed with FEMA for flood insurance, because FEMA is not allowed to put those claims into the clue. So we won't know if there's a flood claim that happened prior to their buying the house. Now, if the flood insurance was private, there's private flood insurance and there's FEMA's. then it will show up in clue, because they don't have to adhere to the same laws that FEMA has to. So water claims is a no-no. If there's a prior water claim, they want to know what the customer did so it doesn't happen again. And so a lot more detail is needed than we used to have to know. And you know, I would say, again, if you're representing the seller, understand what the agent representing the buyer and why they're asking for it, and just try to explain the situation to your seller, why we need details on this and why it's important. Because they're going to run into the seller when they go to another house, they're going to run into the same thing. So all of this is really needs to be shared now, much more importantly than it ever did. And then water backup is another way of paying claims, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, and why we've become much more hesitant about allowing customers to put in claims and trying to work with them on what their point of pain is and what they can absorb, at least for now, at least for this year, until this situation turns around. Neil, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about, you know, some of the conditions of the property.
Sure. So the title of the slide is eligibility, and this is something that we've really run into quite a bit. Joanne just touched on the prior claims. Now let's talk about the building in this slide. If you could go to Joanne, can you click on?
Yeah,
or can I click on that?
Sorry, I'm not good at this.
Okay, there you go. Right there.
Okay, there we are. Okay.
So one of the things that's always been questions we ask is about updating on the house. And a lot of it was just to make sure the house has been maintained and been kept up with. They want to make sure the electrical has been updated and there's no fuses. They want to make sure that the plumbing lines and hot water heaters have been replaced. They want to make sure if it's an oil or gas heated building that the boiler has been maintained and updated. But now the big item that they're focusing on is roofs. And this can vary by company, but many companies right now have drawn a line in the sand because of all the water claims and natural disasters we've had, that they will not insure a home if the roof is over 20 years old. So it's very important that when a seller lists a home, that could be a very important piece of information to put in there. How old is the roof? Because the people buying it may have an inspection done and have to replace it themselves. And the last thing you want to see is have somebody who's a first-time buyer who's got their savings all tied up in buying the house have to then finance or put 20 or 30,000 or more into a brand new roof just to get insurance. Important things that the companies are looking for, and they're now using satellite and drone technology. We've seen some of the programs where you can put an address in and it focuses squarely on the condition of the roof, and they can see discoloration, they can see mold, they can see wear and tear. And I've had submissions where I've gone to companies and say, you know, the roof is been inspected. The inspector says, hey, it's got another 5 or 10 years life on it. And they'll go in and look at either your real estate listing or a drone photo and say, no, we don't want it. There's moss on it. It looks like the shingles are worn. There's discoloration. So these are things that are now coming up and being more prevalent. We got spoiled for years where, you know, maybe they may only need a cleaning of the roof, and there are many companies that can go out and do that type of cleaning. But if the roof is 20 years old or more, that's going to be a tough sell. Now I'm referring to a asphalt or architectural shingle roof. Slate roofs are totally different. You don't replace those; those get maintained. It's important that the shingles are all in good, the tiles are all in good repair. and have been updated and inspected. Flat roofs have always been limited in this area. There are only a limited number of companies that do these. They're looking for the updated materials. I think there's the new ones now are like a rolled rubber type material. And again, that takes special consideration and certain markets that take care of that. I mentioned the how the use of drones. So when we write a new homeowner policy, we always tell the person that once you're in during the first 30 days or so, someone from an outside service or a company will arrange for an inspection. And of course, they're not going to come out, jump on a ladder and go look at the roof. They're going to use a drone these days to get up there and take photos of it. Not only are they looking at the condition of the roof, but they're also looking at how the trees overhang the house. There's one company that actually has this all programmed in the background when you put the address in and can show the percentage of overhanging trees. And that may mean that they need to be cut back or taken down. So that's another consideration when you see a home that in more of a wooded area. I already touched on moss growth. The argument behind that is that moss can grow on the roof and force the shingles to where there's an opening and water can get in. And that's a very important thing to make sure that the roof, it's not expensive to have a roof cleaned, and that can really also help with the selling part of it. But roof age is a big consideration these days. EIFS siding has been around since the late 80s, early 90s. It's a fake stucco. And a lot of insurance companies, because of certain municipalities, have had a large amount of mold claims. Water gets trapped behind that fake stucco area. Between that and the interior wall, and mold would grow, and it was very difficult to remediate. So some companies will not do it. In the early 2000s, this EIFS siding was updated, and it is now more, it's better sealed and more water retardant, but you still need to have somebody go in on an annual basis and do a test. They do what's called a moisture test on it. It's minimally invasive and can make sure that there's no water getting trapped behind there. And most companies will want to see that you have some kind of a service contract to have that done. Swimming pools have, many people have pools, and in most towns, you're required to have a gate anyway with a self-locking gate. That's the one with the latch where the door shuts and you can't open it. Even better these days is to have a cover or one of those mechanical covers that covers the pool. But yeah, the gate is a must. And if there is a diving board, slide, or other type of platform, let us know ahead of time just to make sure that a company is okay with that. We can move on to the next slide. So I covered some of the things that are in this slide. Insurance companies want to see that the electrical system has been updated. Electrical fires are a big peril that they've seen. Even though it may not burn the entire home, it can cause quite a large partial loss. And so it's important that the electrical panel be updated with good circuit breakers. Back in the 80s and 90s, there was a panel put in called Pacific Electric or Stay Block. You don't see too many of those today, but we have run across them. If you see those labels on the box, it is important that it be updated right away. That's something that if it's uncovered in an inspection will lead to an immediate letter of cancellation. Handrails are kind of another item that companies look for. So if there's an entrance to the home, basement stairs, Stairs leading up to a deck, if they're more than 3 or 4 steps, they're gonna require some type of handrail. Security systems, alarms, with all the new technology out there and things that go to phones. At one time, almost everyone was putting in central station burglar and fire alarms through ADT or another company that like that, a local outfit. The companies really want them in for any homes valued over $1 million. And the fire part of it alone can prevent so much damage because of the quicker response if something were to break out in the home. They have heat and smoke detectors. They'll send a signal to the central station alarm. And it also gives a good credit on the homeowner policy. The central station burglar and fire alarm now can give you, with many companies, 10 to 15% off. So it's definitely worth it. The security you have with it is good peace of mind. The burglary portion now are usually motion sensors with every once in a while, Westchester has a rash of burglaries in certain areas. And this can also save somebody from, stealing your jewelry or computers or anything valuable in the home. Simply Safe has a really great central station system. In some cases, you can do it yourself, and it's pretty easy, and it can be hooked into their monitoring system very easily as well. The newest thing out there that's become more and more prevalent that companies are asking for are water leak detections. If there's been a prior water claim in the home, some companies are mandating these. If a home is also a high value, over 1.5 million or more, they may want an automatic shutoff put in. Many of the companies are offering discounts now on the device, and they can also refer you to a local plumber to put that in. Water leak detectors are very easy and can be bought off Amazon or in Home Depot. I have them in my house. I think it was about $150. I got 4 of them. They hook into Wi-Fi. They go to my phone. So if there's a leak by the toilet has a tank, a line, and the toilet itself. So there's 3 ways that water can escape, and having one there is perfect. I put them under the sink. So if the elbow all of a sudden starts leaking, or one of the lines going to the faucet, or near a hot water heater. Those, again, if once you know they're on there, you can alert somebody and get the water shut off. And one just piece of risk management that I've found, and home inspectors have told me, and other professionals, make sure that the home buyer knows where the main water shutoff is for the home. So if something does happen and they see water dripping or a wall start to get wet from a leaky or broken pipe, they can go right to the basement and hit that right away, and then call us and talk to us about whether or not there's damage enough. Elevation certificates, and this is going to be a little contradictory. I know we've done flood insurance programs before where we say elevation certificates are not needed anymore with the new program. Well, the elevation certificate also may be required by the homeowner's insurance company. Joanne touched upon the fact that companies now have moratoriums where they're not writing business or writing coastal business a little at a time, or very restrictively with very high deductibles. One of the things that goes with coastal business is, in many cases, those homes are within a high-risk flood zone, an A or a V. And to get the home insurance, they want the elevation certificate to see that the home and service machinery are positively elevated. It means that the home and the machinery are over the FEMA base flood estimate. They want to know that if water does get in the house, that it doesn't destroy those machineries, because then the house is not operative and it can cause other types of problems to the home, either no heat, no water, possibly mold. So they do want those elevation certificates, and that's something we do check on with all new home purchases and homeowner policies we write. We do check the flood zone to, one, get the zone that the house is in, and we also want to know how close the nearest high-risk zone is and how close the nearest source of flooding is or water supply. Dog breeds, I'll just quickly say, in New York, there's no quote, dog list anymore. However, there are questions that they want to know if the dog is aggressive or has bitten anyone. I touched upon the proximity to the coastline. Certain zip codes are not eligible with many companies. There were specific companies that wrote in those high-risk areas, and right now, to circle back what Joanne said about the reinsurers, because of those costs, they've put a moratorium on writing business in those areas and have made it very difficult to move customers to another company or to even submit an application. So we can check that out. We use a system called a risk meter, which tells the distance to the shore. And again, we do the flood zone determination. Oil tanks, we've talked about in the past, they've got to be above ground. The companies that will take an underground oil tank are few and far between. It can be very expensive for someone to have home insurance with an underground oil tank. Joanne touched upon the prior claims. Those have become more and more scrutinized when submitting an application now. Renovations. This is a bad word in the insurance industry.
Our most dreaded word when we're asking questions about homes.
So a lot has happened since the pandemic. One is the shortage of properties for sale and people wanting to move to the area. They're kind of settling for a home rather than getting the perfect home because of the lack of supply. So they feel, hey, we'll buy the house and we'll just go in and gut it, or we'll do some major stuff before we move in. I'm going to skip down to the last sentence in the line. I'll probably repeat this 6 or 7 times today. Homeowners insurance is for an owner-occupied home. When you buy the home, move in. Doesn't have to be a full furnish every single room in the house type of thing, but move in so that you meet the eligibility. There will be an inspection on the home. They will look, even if it's an exterior one, they'll look in the windows to make sure there's furniture. Partially move in, because when it comes to renovations, it's not like you can just close and go in and do what you want to do. You have to interview contractors because companies do not want do-it-yourself renovations. They want to see certificates of insurance from these contractors to make sure if something happens that they can hold them accountable. But also the towns, and I have several examples where people have bought homes. The towns are just not issuing these permits quickly. It's taking months. We have one in Irvington that's taken 9 months. We had one in Dobbs Ferry that took 6-7 months to get the permits. When you buy a home, don't move in, and the permits take this long, the house is no longer eligible for homeowners insurance because it's considered vacant. And companies do not want to insure a vacant home. It can severely jeopardize your coverage because a lot of the things that would be covered in a home policy now are under suspension until the house is occupied while the house is vacant. So it's very important, if someone's talking about renovating a home, they have to understand, set up a bedroom, use the kitchen, stay there on a weekend. When you get your permits, then, put the stuff in storage or move it to a room that's not being worked on, and go ahead and do the renovations then. And banks will not accept a builder's risk policy on a home purchase in many cases. So that's another reason to plan to do some minor moves and at least occupy the home until you're ready to start. Replacement cost, how is it determined? This can be another sticker shock for an insured, depending on the market condition of the home. I think the question we get here on a daily basis is why is my insurance limit more than what I paid for the home? Well, there's two different factors there. What they're paying for the home, of course, is based on the local market and comparative home sales. The insurance is based on construction costs, and those have really skyrocketed. Joanne explained why that's happened over the last several years, but the cost of labor, the cost of materials, the delay in getting the materials, all those have now pushed replacement costs up considerably in Westchester County. And home insurance there are conditions in it that you insure the house to its replacement value or what it would cost to rebuild it. And other things that have taken into consideration are local building codes. If an older home here in Greenberg is destroyed, has to be rebuilt, not only are they going to rebuild the house with like kind of quality materials, but they may have to put a sprinkler system in. They may need to redo the wiring or plumbing and bring it up to changes in codes. They may have to do the roof construction differently, especially moving towards the coast. You may have to put different types of materials in. So those are things that push construction costs up. Inflation rates have also increased over the years. That may settle, hopefully, as inflation comes down. And again, the supply chain shortages have created longer times to settle claims and increase the overall cost of building a home. So now the good things of things that we talk about with our homeowners clients, how to save on the home insurance. There's a lot of rules now. There's a lot of increases in costs. So we go through a checklist. One is look to combine it with the auto insurance. There's generous package discounts with most companies, and it also gives them a little more leverage. Companies look at an account business differently than they look at a single policy if it comes to making a decision whether or not to renew that person if they've had a couple of claims. Higher deductibles now have become part of the conversation. The $1,000 deductible is almost going away. In fact, companies are even mandating higher deductibles on policies. We'll give someone options. Many companies are starting at $2,500 now. And there's a reason for that. One is it'll help keep the costs down, but small claims are just something that have become more and more tough in the industry. Somebody who puts in two small losses in 3 years could be looking at some very substantially higher rates, or possibly not being offered a renewal with the tightened market out there.
I'm just going to jump in and
Yeah.
just to give you an example of one that I'm working on now, who called me, who had his home insured through another company, and has 3 losses. One was $1,500, one was $800, and the other wasn't even $5,000. They're non-renewing him. He was paying close to $2,000 in premium. The best I could do for him in a non-admitted market, which I don't like to do, but that we're having to do it more and more, is $9,800. And he won't be eligible for a standard market again for 5 years, 5 years from the last claim. So it is so important that you think about putting in a claim and what the impact will be.
And that's why we're here. As an agent, we're here to help our clients navigate this hard market, help them control costs, and provide some suggestions and advice when they do have something happen or they plan to do something in the future. I did mention the water leak detectors, permanently installed generators. Not all companies offer credit yet for these. These are the ones, the Generacs, where they're actually hooked into the electrical system. They are powered by either some type of a battery or propane, but those can prevent so much damage, especially as you get up into northern Westchester, where a tree can come down, knock out power for a couple of weeks. A generator can keep the house heated, it can keep the power on, and can also just keep the house livable while the power gets restored. Security cameras are another thing that companies are looking at. It shows a lot of times they'll go to the phone, but they can also be hooked into your alarm system, where if somebody were to come to an area of the house that they could break a window and get in or something, they'll know about it. They'll also get a description of the person doing it, and hopefully law enforcement can take it from there and arrest the person and reclaim anything that's stolen. So these are just things that we go over with our homeowner clients, suggestions to help them save money. I mentioned on the updating, some companies even will give discounts if the house has been updated or renovated. So Joanne's going to move on to the next slide and talk about flood insurance.
Yeah, I figured we couldn't have a meeting with all of you without at least talking a little bit about flood insurance. We all saw what happened in Highland and Stony Point from the storm damage, and most of those people were in an X zone, which means they weren't required to carry flood insurance. And, people ask me, well, what is it that people, misunderstand about today's flood threats? And I said, I think the problem is that people just don't think it will happen to them. And I can't tell you how many times when people call to report that a flood claim, they say, I've lived here 50 years and nothing ever happened. And the answer to that is that, did the topography around you change? Or is there more building going on? Did your neighbor put in new curbs on his driveway? Did he put in a patio or a pool? All these things change the way water flows. So you can't rely on what was happening on your property yesterday. You have to be very aware of what's going on around you. And I think the way that, building is going on around us is definitely having an impact on why we're seeing so much more flooding than we used to. Again, elevation certificates, they're no longer required. The companies use longitude and latitude to figure out your property, determine the impact that flooding will have. For example, here in Tarrytown, there's a street a couple blocks from me, and has an underground stream. People buy those homes, they have no idea those underground streams are there, and then the water just permeates up through the basement. Go down another half mile, and there is this huge development that was put in, beautiful big homes, and all the people that are just below it are experiencing terrible flooding now, because when these rains come, it's going into their basements, which they never had for years until that development was built. So people need flood insurance. They buy fire insurance, they buy their homeowner insurance. Ask them, do you think a fire is going to happen? Of course not. But yet they don't buy the flood insurance, and there's much more chance that you're going to have flood claim than there is that you're going to have a fire. And 40% of all flood claims that are reported are not in a flood zone that requires you to carry the flood insurance. So you can help get that message across. I wish that the insurance industry would make the insurance companies just put flood insurance on everybody's policy. That's not going to happen. So we just need to educate people on how important it is to buy a flood insurance policy. The rates are impacted by the occupancy. Is it your primary home, your secondary home, a rental? If it has a walkout basement, makes a difference from a below ground basement. Many of the older homes, the problem is those basements are below ground on all four sides. So think of it as a bucket, and then it gets filled with water and it has no way to get back out. That's why many of those homes, it's much more expensive to get flood insurance for them. When it was built, pre-firm, post-firm, if it was the newer homes have to be built to FEMA specs, so the premiums for them are less because they should be able to withstand a flood. Private flood insurance is available. Mostly it's with your high net worth companies like Chubb, AIG, Cincinnati, Pure. Those are the companies that are writing flood insurance, but most of them won't write if you're in a flood zone. So that really won't help you. But if you have a finished basement, FEMA doesn't cover finished basements. So you look to find, if you think that you're going to have, you might have an exposure to flooding, you look to find a private company. And there are some that write in New York, they're just more expensive than FEMA is. But you have to weigh the risk of whether or not you have a finished basement and whether or not you want to have insurance for it. I encourage everyone to ask for a flood determination from their insurance agent. We do them regularly for our customers. They have a lot of information on them. They will tell you if there's other flood claims that have been in your neighborhood, in your area. It will tell you how close you are to a flood zone. I'll see them come in and people will say, no, you don't need to buy it. Your bank's not going to require it, but you're only 400 feet from a flood zone. So you might want to buy it and just wait it out and see how that's going to change. So these are all factors that we try to educate our customers when we're talking about flood insurance. Water backup coverage, we've used that a lot for our customers, and we don't write a policy without putting that on it, because if water backs up through a drain, a sump pump into the basement, very often you can put the coverage through this water backup. Now, if it's, 5 feet of water in your sump pump, there was no way the sump pump was ever going to keep that water out, then, it becomes questionable about whether the water backup will cover it. The only issue right now is that we're warning people about putting claims in. So until this hard market leaves us and things go back to normal, if you called me with water in your basement and you had water backup coverage and you also had a flood policy, I'm going to tell you to put it in under the flood policy. Why? Because one, it's not going to go through a clue report. It's not going to show up. Two, because it's not going to impact your homeowner rates. Your homeowner rates won't go up because, or renewal, whether or not your policy gets renewed. So we're looking at both of those now. And if people do have flood and they do have the water backup, where we used to try to put it through the water backup, we're not doing that right now. And we're explaining to people why, but we don't want to impact those policies. We're trying to preserve them for that real catastrophe when they really have to put that claim in. And I think that's important. Well, now more than ever, home buyers really need an insurance agent to guide them. Don't make the mistake of calling your company first and don't ever use the word flood. You have water in your basement, don't know where it came from, you're waiting for a plumber to figure it out. We do not use that word, but talking to your insurance agent, seeing what you can do to preserve your policies is more important than ever. Neil, I'm sure you have some words on that as well.
Yeah, there's a well-known company that you see on TV, and people call them for their home insurance because they have their auto with them, and they don't place home insurance themselves, so they write it with another company. And in some cases, it's a company we represent. And we had an instance where someone was doing, building a home, got a policy through this company, with a company we represent, and they were asking some underwriting questions, and there was a questionnaire that needed to be filled out. And they provided all the answers to them, sent it over to the company. Well, they never forwarded it on to the homeowner company, and it ended up with a lapse. And nobody was giving them any help to get the policy reinstated or work with them on behalf of themselves with the company. If they had been with us, the questionnaire would have been done, our account manager would have sent it in, they would have followed up with an underwriter to make sure everything was acceptable and be able to get back to them and make sure their policy was going to be renewed and they could finish their project. And that's really why we're here. We're not a company that you're going to bring up the app on the phone, quote your insurance, hit issue, and get a policy. We're here to do the research. We're here to help you provide this information to your home buyers so they're prepared. And this way they can make good decisions and decide on what coverages they may need and have someone there to advocate for them if there is an underwriting issue or a potential claim.
So I think we'll turn this over to questions now, Mary.
Okay, we have a large group, so I mean, you can put the questions in the chat. Oh, okay, we're getting some here now. Yes, somebody's asking, will we get the slides? Yes, we're going to record this presentation. But I don't know, Joanne, would you feel comfortable giving them the slides as well, the presentation? Or?
Oh, I've never thought about that. Let me think about it.
Okay. Someone is asking,
Okay.
can you please comment on the ads received in the mail from the water company for waterline sewage coverage? Is it worth it?
Oh, I think you're referring to the service line coverage.
Yes.
So our many companies offer what is called, they've clarified that many of it is called buried utility line or service line. It does cover service to the house other than a water line. So it does provide, it's actually a coverage that we feel is very useful these days. It covers not only the water line, but also the sewer lines. If there's cable TV or underground power line, it's not expensive. And again, that's something that we would talk to our clients about as far as how it works and whether or not they need it. But it can be added to many homeowner policies today. And it's also what is called whitelisted or underwritten by a third party, usually Hartford Steam Boiler. So they have specialized people for claims, and not with all companies, but with many companies, that claim does not affect them going forward.
Okay.
Can you tell me which I'm sorry, can you tell me which water line company that was again?
Hartford Steam Boiler offers it with many of the companies, and it's called either service line or buried utility line coverage.
Because there was one that if you look after water line, it's like the DEP recommends, but I've read the reviews on that company and it was terrible. It wasn't Hartford Steam, and there was another one.
The question, Nanette actually asked it. She said Veolia, Veolia.
Yeah, Veolia took over United Water Company in Rockland County, and I think on the west side of the Hudson.
I think most of the insurance companies now are offering the service line coverage. So I would check with your homeowner insurance agent and see if it can be added, because, you know, we send out emails to our customers telling them they can now add it. And it's amazing how few of them will contact us and say they want to add it, you know, because you get so many emails and you just don't take the time to look at it all the time until something happens. So you should check with your homeowner company to see if it's there.
We have a question. If the finished basement, bathroom in the basement are not legal, will insurance be able to cover that?
I'm sorry, I didn't, is it
Yeah, you're
legal? Is that what you
cutting out a
said?
little bit, Mary.
Okay, it says if the finished basement or bathroom in the basement are not legal, will insurance be able to cover it?
Yeah, there's nothing in the contract that says it has to be legal, and so that's not a question they're gonna ask you when they come in to settle your claim. They're just gonna come in. If you have a finished basement, whether or not you got the permits to have it, whether you did it legally is irrelevant. It's kind of like, you know, when you're driving your car and you have a terrible accident and then get a ticket for a DWI, it doesn't void your insurance still pays, so.
Someone's asking about, yes, we'll put Joanne's contact information when we send out the recording. Someone is saying, you mentioned in ground oil tanks being a problem and uninsurable. What about, somebody's asking about ground propane tanks? Any concern for insurance companies? This is a 20-year-old home.
I think I see it. Is that the one about the propane tank?
Yes.
Propane tanks generally are not a problem. It's strictly oil, because oil can leak, pollute the soil, run into someone else's property or a potential watershed or park or something like that. Whereas propane it's a gas. It's you know, none of the companies have ever given us a problem on a propane tank.
And what about outside? Because I have an outside oil tank.
Is
That
it
is
above ground?
It's above ground.
In most cases, that's fine.
Okay. Someone else is, as I would go to a town to check on open COs, is there a place to go to see if a property has had flooding problems?
If you're talking flood, meaning rising waters, and they filed a flood claim through a FEMA policy, FEMA has very strict rules that they will only share that with their property, with the property owner. They will not share it with anyone else. So unlike a homeowner company who is sharing all your information with the world through a clue report, FEMA does not share that. So you won't always know. You won't always know.
Right.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? This was really, really interesting, Joanne and Neil. Thank you very much. We all learned a lot.
Are the handouts and stuff gonna be emailed to us?
We're going to send the recording, and Joanne, you let us know about the slides.
I did put up the contact one for you now so that you have that.
Okay. We're just getting another question from the net. Can a prospective buyer obtain a clue report on a property?
I'm sorry. Neil, can you see that? What you said?
1 second.
Can a prospective buyer
Oh,
obtain
okay.
a clue
So,
report?
we get that question all the time. What I would do is have that prospective buyer come, because we will need their name. We'll need a date of birth for them. We'll need the property that they're looking at and also their current address. And this way we can generally get a clue report through a company and see. Now, Clue is a service that companies subscribe to. Not all companies do, but I would say 95% of the ones out there do. So some of the information can differ, but we use a company that should be pretty accurate and give an idea of the address that the claim happened and some type of a category. It'll either code it as wind, water, sewer backup, property damage, maybe even reference jewelry. So it can be done. And so I would recommend a prospective buyer to provide that information.
Okay, great. Well, listen, I think everyone's just saying great presentation, very informative. And I thank you both again. And we will be sending out this recording hopefully this afternoon or early tomorrow morning.
And please remember, if you need a flood zone run, please, contact us by email or phone. Give us the address. We can usually pull that up pretty quickly for you and send it out. As Joanne said, there's a lot of information in it. The zone now really is just a determinant of whether or not they have to buy flood insurance for the loan. It's the other information in it that can be very important. You may not be required to have flood insurance, but you might be under 500 feet from an area that floods, or you might have a water supply or a source of flooding under 1,000 feet from the house. So it's always good to check that information out. And we'll be glad to supply it for anyone.
Neil, can you just give the phone number one more time for everyone?
Is our contact?
Is the contact screen not up? I thought I put it.
No, it's a
No.
Zoom. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the last slide.
Yeah, is it on there now?
No.
There it is.
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Great.
So here you go. So that has our emails and direct phone numbers. Those phone numbers don't go through our switchboard. So if you do, get a voicemail or so, just leave a quick message. We'll be sure to call you right back on it.
Okay.
So, we thank you for being here today, and
Yeah.
remember, we are here to help you. It's a difficult time in the real estate market. It's a difficult time now in the insurance market, but if we work together, we can help each other. And please just don't hesitate to call. We're here you can pick our brain anytime.
Great. Thank you both so much, and thank you all for attending. And we will see you soon. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You.
Bye-bye.
Mary, bye.